obviously you guys, definitely Rob and Jason, from what I've seen, are huge Roman Reigns fans. DJ, I know where you are on Roman Reigns necessarily. Are you on the same boat
Oh,
as
I'm
those
on
two
the same
guys?
page they are. Yeah,
Okay, there you go.
absolutely a Roman. All on for Roman Reigns, man.
Yeah. Um, like I said, when before I got back into it 2 years ago, all I heard was, 'cause you hear about Roman Reigns and people complain about how, like, well, this is Vince forcing him down our throat and all this stuff, and I got all that. I got back into it right when he got back from leukemia. Uh, he when he was declared leukemia free, thank God.
Mhm.
And I like what they did with him. They, instead of forcing him on the throat again, they eased him a little bit into it. But now, and look, and maybe if the pandemic didn't happen, they wouldn't have done this. But the one good thing about the pandemic is that I guess they were forced to turn him heel. But I gotta tell you, this Roman Reigns run since August has been phenomenal. I mean, just truly, and the slow build and the patience they've done with it. And I'm so glad and the way they've booked him all the way through WrestleMania, you know, stacking both Daniel Bryan and Edge, which I loved.
Oh,
You know,
awesome.
to me, this is, for me anyway, and we'll see how long this thing goes. The So far, probably one of the best championship runs we've seen probably in decades. Potentially could be in decades, like since like Hogan in 80, 84 to 88 or 89, or something of that nature. I hope the WWE keeps the belt on Roman through the next Mania, because whoever gets the chance to beat Roman, whatever it may be, whether it's WrestleMania or beyond, will be so over because Roman will be over as the heel. How would you guys book Roman Reigns moving forward?
I've talked about it. I think ideally with no I wave the magic wands and it happens. He goes into the next WrestleMania as champion, beats The Rock, walks out of WrestleMania as the Universal Champion, and then maybe we start polishing up whoever's really going to take him down. Maybe it's SummerSlam. Maybe if you really stretch it to the next Mania. I mean, I doubt that happens, but
No.
I yeah, I think he is going to walk out of next year's Mania as the champion. He's just going to start just stacking people.
DJ?
Um, I probably tend to agree with that. I would not be surprised if they threw a surprise, somebody snuck up and there's a way to get the title off of him briefly without it looking like somebody took him down. I think they may pull that off between now and then, but I believe he dominates all the way into next year's WrestleMania. If I had to book it, I think just to freshen things up, because what I'm worried about with this is that people are going to start turning on the fact that nobody can beat them. And you have to be careful with that in the modern wrestling fandom. It was easy to do when it was Hogan back in the 80s because this was all fresh. Like, this was like what Vince was doing was new back then. As we're 30 years into this now, the template, you don't want to keep copying the template too much, even though a wrestling show is a wrestling show. With Roman, like I said, my concern is that if he's too dominant for too long, people are going to start to turn on that too. And he's been amazing. Like, for early on in like 20, let's see, I came back in 2012. I'd say Roman really started to hit his stride in 13, 14. I wasn't totally dialed into Roman Reigns then. I gravitated right towards Seth Rollins. Like, there was just something about Seth Rollins that was like my dude, and he's still to this day my dude. But I also was still early on in the internet wrestling community on Twitter, so I was falling into all those getting pushed down our throats trappings, and and I really fell into that. And then before I really started to pull myself back a little bit and look at it, as a fan and a lifelong fan and as a former worker, saw what they were doing with Roman Reigns, and that's when I became a fan of him. But if he goes too long and he's dominant for too long, I'm worried that fans, are as fickle as they are going to turn on that. If I had to do it, I would have somebody sneak in, and somebody unexpected can like sneak in, get a quick win on him 1 month, and then next month he goes back and wins it back, just to keep things fresh and just to keep it in people's minds that somebody could beat him. Because I think if he's too unbeatable, people are going to start to tune out, being like, okay, nobody's ever going to beat this guy.
Rob?
Okay, well, I'd say a lot depends on the availability of Mr. Dwayne Johnson next year. Uh, if he's not available, then I think I would keep him, as champion until WrestleMania. And I would, right now, the person who looks like the one to beat him is Big E out of everyone there. So, if you can't get The Rock next year, then I think you put the Big E plan in motion so that you can do that match then, and then Big E can beat him. Um, Now, if you can get Dwayne, then that kind of changes things up. But of course, that doesn't have to be for the title though. So you can take the title off of him before that match happens, and Um, but right now, I would not have him lose before WrestleMania, unless like I said, unless you do want to do the thing where he loses it and gets it back. But even if you're going to do that, I would not have somebody beat him, or at least I would do the basically the kind of the triple threat or fatal four way match kind of cop out and have somebody pin somebody else, and then I would do that if you're going to take the title off of him anytime soon. That's what I would do. Because then that can add to the character. He get even more pissed off and all that kind of thing. And you can and then you can have him win it back without having somebody pin him, because whoever it is that beats him straight up has got to be somebody who can go forward as champion for some time, right? I mean, this is not the time to do because some people want to, well, just be great for Cesaro to get a win here. Like, no.
Yeah.
Okay. You don't do that here. All right. You don't. And
it's got to make sense.
Right? No, right, exactly. Because look, I love Cesaro. Cesaro's great, but at the end of the day, he is who he is, and he is not somebody that you would put that belt on and have them keep it for any length of time. So there's no, I mean, right now, again, the person who looks that way looks like Big E right now is the one to do that with, because he checks all the boxes. He can work. He's a big dude. He has a lot of personality and all of that stuff, right? And so that's why I think out of everyone there, I think he's the one to do that with. And it's just a matter of when you want to do it. And I think the best time to do it would be WrestleMania.
Right. I do agree with Big E. I mean, we all thought that Big E may have been a guy as early as this year to take him over. Who knows? I'll tell you who actually would make sense, and this will be a legacy building victory for this person. Drew McIntyre. So let's say Drew McIntyre plays in WrestleMania next year. He beats WrestleMania. Roman Reigns has had his belt all the way through. It's a legacy building thing, and he gets his Mania moment finally, and it'll be a big moment. Like, I'm looking at guys who can, because the next guy who beats Roman, in my opinion, has to be a guy that is pretty much passing the torch, if you will, quote unquote. Not necessarily passing the torch like he's the guy now, but the guy you see for the next 5 or 10 years being the guy. And to me, it's the only guy I can see. I mean, I like the Big E thing, but I think Drew McIntyre is the only other guy I think that can benefit from beating Roman by getting that Mania moment and then building an even bigger legacy than what he has already now.
That's reasonable. And it definitely seems like they have a long-term investment in Drew McIntyre. And the other one that I had in mind, only because they sowed the seeds for this one 2 years ago at Survivor Series, and if he's healthy and he comes back, is Keith Lee. Obviously there's a lot of buzz around Keith Lee. I'm huge on Keith Lee. Like they could push him to the moon and I'd be the happiest pal on the planet. For me, if I had to pick one of those three, if I had to book it, Keith Lee would be the guy to upend Roman Reigns definitively. And that's something I love the hell out of Big E, and I wish the world for the guy. But of the three of those, Keith Lee would be the one that I would book it if I were, fantasy booking it.
A lot of stuff about Keith Lee. I don't know what's going on with him. Like, supposedly he was cleared to come back, and I guess they had nothing for him, apparently, what I've heard.
It's very cryptic. Like he's
Yeah.
posted a couple of things on Twitter and said, "Look, when I get back, I'll explain it. There's a lot to talk about." And then some people started to, you know how the internet is, the speculation started, and of course, Mia Yim jumped in the other day and said, "Look, you guys don't know what's going on, and it's none of your business anyway." I support that sentiment. It's not our business. I got into a brief one with Tanya from the Suplexes and Shea Butters podcast. And I was basically like, am I concerned as a fan? Yes. Do I want to know what's going on with Keith Lee? Absolutely. Do I need to know? No. When he's ready to tell us, he'll let us know.
Yeah, it's pretty. When he and his wife have both separately and publicly asked for privacy, that's all we should be offering at this point.
Right. I totally agree.